I hear some echo.
I do as well.
Okay, I think now it's gone.
Yes,
It might
it
be
does.
me. I'm muted and unmuted my mic. It was that.
Cool. Yeah, just for the folks who have just joined, we are waiting still until 7 p.m. before we kick off. But yeah, welcome. Welcome to the event. Okay, I think we can start soon. So yeah, I believe if people are joining mid-event, it doesn't matter. They'll just dive deep into the conversations immediately. But hi everyone, and welcome to our very first online event hosted by our cluster team from Aiven. I'm Kaiso from the cluster team, and together with my colleague Julie, who is here also today, we're really excited to have you here with us today. This session actually kicks off kind of like new event series focused on sharing insights and practical knowledge for startups to help them build or help you build a strong data infrastructure for your company. And today we're diving deeper into a powerful topic on why open source is a startup superpower. We'll start with the brief introductions from our speakers and then dive deeper into conversation, exploring topics like how did open source tool influence their infra decisions from early on and what trade-offs they might have needed to do between customizability and speed when they were building. And finally, after the discussion part, we'll wrap up the session with the 10-minute Q&A. So during the talk, feel free to write down any questions you have on the chat, or if you have a question, put a note there. So at the end, I can give you the mic and you can ask the questions from our speakers. But yeah, joining us here for the discussion today, we have three amazing speakers. We have our own head of solution architects, Amine Slimane. Then we have Johan Jern, who is co-founder and CTO at Realm. And last but definitely not least, we have Nikita Varentsov, who is director of engineering at a startup called Inkitt. But yeah, thanks again for being here, and let's get started.
Awesome. Thanks, Kaisu. Hey, everyone. A pleasure to welcome you all in this webinar today. Thanks, Nikita and Johan, to be with me as well. Maybe let's start with a question for you, Johan. What makes open source attractive for startups moving fast?
Good question. I mean, like going back a bit, I think any infra tool decisions for a startup, just like speed is for me at least like one of the most important things. Like you just need to get stuff out there so you can iterate and so you can build a product that's useful to someone. And I think, well, there's a lot of things with open source, but maybe the main ones is that like it's often something you can try yourself. And most people have like tried open source products like before starting a company or at a previous company. So often it just like happens that, for me at least, that like open source is what I know from before. And that applies to me, and that applies also to kind of the people you hire, which is which is like very, very important. So that's the main thing. Then I think one other thing I could bring up is, for example, that it's very easy to try because in our case, for example, we handle like personal data and so on. So if we want to add like a new vendor that's going to process PAI, then there's like a whole process, like we need a DPA or we need to update our DPA with all of our existing customers and so on and so forth. And like they need to approve it, we need to kind of audit the vendor and so on. But the open source, you can at least try it out without any of that. You can just like write yourself. Then maybe if you want, have someone else like handle the hosting and so on, you can do that. But that's not a requirement, like to try something else, try something out and get started. Let's see. Yeah, I think those are the main things. Like you can move fast. People know that stuff. You can make decisions quickly. You don't have to talk to sales or like kind of audit or anything. You can just get started. And for a startup, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. And obviously, you're like such a small team at the beginning, so not starting from scratch and just going with a technology that works, that you have experienced in the past. And to your point, not having to go through like cycles into testing, validating the technology, etc., is so important. Thanks, Johan. And Nikita, what about you?
Yeah, basically, I can second Johan here. Yeah, that like speed of validation, the technology is extremely fast. And yeah, in general, like the open source like software, like there are a lot of like really proven solutions out there that like used by like big companies and even like there are like, contributions from the big companies like back to the open source software. So like they're just building blocks that you can like Lego. Yeah, like when you just starting your company, like starting yours, like building infrastructure. Yeah, you don't have to like do things from the scratch. Yeah, you don't have to either like write your own thing, which yeah, sorry for this images. Yeah, which definitely like takes a lot of time and probably just a bad idea for a startup. Yeah, and you don't have to like looking for a vendor. Yeah, like negotiating the price up front. Yeah, like the technology. Like probably you can think about like databases as a probably like most common example in that direction. That like every company needs a database, and you have plenty of like really production ready like databases, like products there, like MongoDB, like PostgreSQL, like MySQL. All of them kind of came already to the point where they are like a golden standard. Yeah, there is no need to even think about something else or like some different solutions that could be like could lead into like vendor logs in the future or like something else. So yeah, speed of experimentation, speed of like iteration, and like using this like Lego building blocks to start building the infrastructure. And of course, the cost. Yeah, it costs nothing to just spin it up like on your computer if you're just testing or like have a cheap virtual machine in the cloud and then like spin there anything or like almost anything. Also, yeah, community knowledge. Yeah, that like if you already, let's say, like working with like open source solution, there is a big chance that like a new talent that you like hire will already be familiar with it, right?
Yeah, look at I like the allegory of like the building blocks. I mean, you summarized it well, but pretty much like you want an operational database, you need a streaming building block, you need a search engine, etc.
Yeah.
And every single one of those building blocks got an open source leader, which is absorbing all the innovation from the field and tons of companies working on it. So that's super interesting to hear that. But pretty much both of you have the same mindset. It's like, hey, we want it to be super agile and fast, and not spend time into the technology itself, and just build on top of it as fast as possible. Awesome. A second question that I would have to probably start with you, Nikita, if you don't mind. How did open source tools shape your infra decision early on?
Yeah. So it's probably like coming from the previous topic, right? That like you choose something that like makes sense to like reach a goal. Yeah, like for example, like choosing the like streaming technology. Yeah, like there are a couple, let's say like RabbitMQ, Kafka, that are like fully open source. There are like a bunch of uh, like competitors, like maybe like less known, maybe like more known than that. But let's say, yeah, like RabbitMQ and Kafka are probably like main mm, players in that field. And they have like slightly different concepts in how they operate, and depends on like which product you choose. Like it also influence like the next stages. Yeah, how you build your software. So like how like what architectural principles you imply. Yeah, how would your strategy on the like backups and like ensuring consistency would look like. So like we can look from that angle into the topic. Yeah, also we can look into the topic that probably like if you were speaking about like early stages startups, yeah, there is probably like not enough like data yet to think about like super complex solutions. Yeah, like choose whatever works for you today. Choose simplest thing that you can plug and like start using, and maybe like in the future there will be mm, like some bottlenecks that you will face, but then you will know like that okay, yeah, I chose the simplest path, and like now it's time to like rethink it, maybe like change it to something else. um, but uh, it's it's better to start like faster and move faster.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you're making, because obviously, the infrastructure you were going to build on your open source technologies might not scale to the growth you were going to have as a startup, right? You might have to rethink the architecture at one point so it's more scalable and it's high available, and you got disaster recovery at whatever. But what you're pretty much saying is like, hey, well, you have to be fast. That's the number one thing at the beginning. You have to be fast. You have to be able to deliver, and then you can rethink of the architecture moving forward.
Yeah, exactly. That's correct. Yeah, like there are different topics that we can discuss here as well. That again, like building blocks strategy plays here. Yeah, like when you're early stage, like infrastructure, and like how it would shape. Basically, again, like there are different building blocks for like different purposes, and um like you can start with yeah, plugging like MySQL today because it works and like it's easy, and like some of the people that work like for your company already like has experience with it, right? It's a good strategy. Yeah, like start with something that is already familiar for the team. Um, and like then again, like in the future it might be like not the right technology like on a amount of data, let's say, that you would have like in a 3 years, but it worked for 3 years, right? So who cares?
Yeah, and you were able to deliver as quick as possible, so your customers can use the tech, and you don't have to go through like endless
Yeah,
cycles.
yeah.
Thanks, Nikita. Really valuable. And for you, Johan, what about your journey at Realm?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would echo a lot of what Nikita said, and I think one way to also put, or like how I think about some like more have thought about some like infra decisions and for reference, we're like a 2-year-old company. So when I talk about like early stages, that really means like early stages, like the very first days is that like for us at least, and for most startups, like exactly what database you choose is not gonna like make your startup win or make your startup work. And that goes for like most tech and most infra. However, if you make really bad decisions and end up with like something that's really hard to migrate away from, or something that doesn't scale at all, or something that becomes like super expensive super quickly, like those, like there's like a lot of downside to making bad decisions. There's not that much upside to making the like absolutely perfect decision, the infra that's gonna scale, get us from like, get us to like 1 billion in revenue. That's like it's very unlikely that you'd be able to make that the correct decision, because you don't know the future, and even if you did, it like doesn't matter that much. So I think that's when choosing, like thinking about like infra early, I think was something that's quick to implement, also something that's quick to make decisions on, and it like kind of quick to make decisions on based on these things, like can I quickly figure out if this is easy to implement, and if this is like not going to be like basically a bad decision. Yeah, like simple is better. Kind of like, so what we're building, or what Realm does is AI agents for revenue teams, and infra-wise that basically means RAG, or part of it is RAG. So we have a database like vector database, like search engine, etc. If I think back at like the order in which we chose our like infra pieces, it was basically we started out with just Postgres, and we did like all of the kind of search engine stuff in Postgres as well, and we still have Postgres. And then I don't remember which happened first, but at some point we added these like worker queues that are backed by, well, first Redis, now Valky. So we added like Redis to the stack. And then at some point, kind of Postgres didn't do what we needed it to do for the search part, which was something we kind of like known from the start. And we also knew that moving the search part of the app away from Postgres is not going to be like a hard thing or a big migration. Of course, there's work, but it's not like actually getting the data out of Postgres is not like the hard part. And there we added Vespa, which is also like this open source vector database slash search index. And I think another like decision you have to make, or whenever you like start using some kind of infra, is like, do you want to use do you want to self-host, do you want to use some provider, like how are you doing things? And well, their open source is also nice because it gives you option, like you actually have this choice. So in our case, for example, I think I actually don't even remember. At first we used some not Heroku, I don't even remember what the platform is called, but like a platform similar to Heroku where we had our apps and our databases. Then we moved to Google Cloud. We have our Postgres database in Aiven, and Vespa, for example, we self-host because we can. There is a cloud host, like a hosted version of it, but we are able to do it. I mean, it might work well. I haven't benchmarked it too much recently, but at some point at least we could do it cheaper ourselves and well enough ourselves. So that's kind of, yeah, I guess we've added some other stuff, but that's basically the core, and that core has stayed the same. And I guess one comment about like this infra decisions. So I think like we're not open source absolutists in any way. Like we're, for example, for logs and error tracking, that's something where there are open source solutions that probably at some point when our scale would become big enough that like costs would become an issue with those, then it might make sense to look at hosting those things ourselves. But right now we're like using Sentry and Google Cloud Logs just because they work well enough. It's not something that's like hard to move away from, and it's pretty simple. So that's kind of, I guess, like how I've thought about the decisions early and the decisions that we've made. And I think thus far, at least, knock on wood, it's worked well.
Yeah. Look, I think what I'm hearing, what makes sense is like it's not like you've started with a set of technologies and then you're raising the whole set and saying, okay, gosh, I have to go with another set of technologies. It's more like it's a natural evolution. And that's something we're seeing at Aiven as well. PostgreSQL is so versatile that you can use it for pretty much whatever you want, right? It's obviously transactional at core. You can do a little bit of enterprise data warehouse on top of it, then do some like search if you want. And then as your needs improves, that's where you just deploy the building blocks around. And if you need, for example, in-memory key value data store to do some caching on top of PostgreSQL, that's where Valkey is relevant, and you can like add it at the right time when your mobile app requires it or something like that. So that's pretty insightful. Thanks, folks. And so, Johan, maybe since you're covering this one, third question would be: what trade-offs did you face between customizability and speed?
I think this is an interesting question because I feel like when it comes to like if I'm buying say like a Postgres that's hosted by Aiven, or like some other open source tool that's like hosted by someone else and then or managed by someone else, I think generally or I guess like the trade-off is kind of that like, oh, we're hosting something ourselves, and there's like a lot of configuration you need to be doing and like a lot of decisions you need to make, which takes time and adds some like overhead. But okay, maybe it's like better for your use, like it's exactly set up for your use case. But I think that, or at least like for kind of all the decisions that I've had to make, like infra decisions that I've had to make, I feel like generally with open source, there's the option of like hosting it ourselves and basically tuning it how we want. So I don't know, like with Vespa, for example, we have quite a bit of control of like what types of machines do we run on. Like we can test different like spot nodes. Also, these spot nodes on GCP seem to work really well, and because we want quite a bit of like compute, so it's kind of expensive to run, so it's nice to run on spot nodes, and then we can optimize and be like, okay, like these spot nodes work well, and they're not like kind of they're usually available, so they're not restarted that often, and like all of that stuff. But with open source, you can either do that yourself and tune all the knobs, or you can buy a managed solution by someone else, where someone else has done all the like customizability, which like still has kind of like a large part of all the open source benefits, which is that like you probably know or like you probably know the thing, you can like figure out how the thing works because you can read the code, and there's like a lot of kind of community resources and guides and opinions like online. So well, it's a decision you have to make, but I don't think it's like it's kind of nice because you have both options basically available to you always. And I think like early startup, you probably want to choose like minimize the amount of customization you do and do the like most straightforward thing for the most part, unless there is something where you're very unique, or like say Postgres as your like application database, you're probably not doing anything very special. Like you probably just want like the basic setup, yeah, to start out.
Look, it's great to hear it from from a customer standpoint, from you and Nikita, because obviously on our side at Aiven, we're like a little bit like, okay, well, we propose a managed service, which means that we can't give you God mode and like every single thing's fine tuning and activating, I don't know, like third party extension that are not bulletproof tested, because we run across like hundreds of thousands of nodes and like deployments. Now, obviously, you as a user of PostgreSQL, for example, you might need this one. So I assume the trade off is, if you really need one customization that a managed vendor can't provide, and this is something that's important to your business, then you might decide, because it's open source, to use it in a self-managed way. But then it will going to cost you resources, because someone has to maintain, to manage, to upgrade, etc. And obviously, we're trying at Ivan to make sure that every fine-tuning that you would require, we kind of like can propose a way to do it. So we're not just proposing just an access to the database, but that's a really interesting point of view, Johan. Thanks for that. And Nikita, what about you?
Yeah, again, like I can second Johan here, and like what you said. Um, like there are tools that like you can start using right away, provided by the, like, let's say, cloud solution for something. Yeah, for let's say analytical database, like Snowflake. Yeah, like if you like thinking about like building an analytics over like a billion of events that you ingest per day, like for example, like Inkitt, like we're a data driven company. We would like to know about our like users, what they interested in, what they do inside our application. Here we do a lot of A/B testing, and like it results in like huge volume of events generated by like every person, every like app interaction, every like website interaction, and so on and so on. And then like we have a huge volume of the data. Of course, it didn't like appear from the day zero, right? We had a quite a journey from like very first iteration uh, of the like our analytics system, starting with like simple Postgres, and like, yeah, let's write everything to Postgres. Like at first it was like what, maybe hundreds events per day, then like thousands events per day. So like now it's billions events per day, and like Postgres is definitely not the right solution for that. Uh, but it worked at the beginning, yeah. And so in the beginning, we chose the just like simple solution. Yeah, let's do Postgres, and like back then, I believe we hosted it in like even like in a virtual machine, so like we configured it ourselves. Yeah. uh, then like at some point, yeah, when we decided that okay, Postgres already we see it's as a bottleneck. Yeah, like what should be next? Yeah. Back then we chose to migrate to AWS Redshift. It was like solution that proposed us let's say transparent pricing model. So you could, there were some configuration available for you, but like mostly not. It like configuration that was available is like number of machines that you want to run, and like the type of machines. Let's say like how many like CPU and RAM is available on each machine. And yeah, that solution worked for a while, but then again, like it became too expensive. I would say too expensive and too slow on our case. Um, and that led us to again like thinking, okay, what's next? Like So we sit with a team and think, okay, like how like do we see us like running Redshift for data analytics in like 5 years from now? And yeah, the answer was no. Like Redshift, like it was already like super expensive, and even if we would like optimize everything that we can, yeah, it probably would not be like much uh, cheaper.
Mm.
So, and we decided to migrate to the ClickHouse, uh, which like led to like another view on this topic. Like ClickHouse on premise is definitely like much more customizable, much more like you have control like over everything, how data is stored, like what like index type. Yeah, you can even like implement some your own extensions there. Uh, but it comes with a cost of the team who can manage it. So back then, when we chose Redshift, we didn't have a team who would be able to like manage this type of like software on that scale. Like now we do, and now that decision is like easier. So like always think about like the team that you have at the moment. Yeah, like if the current team will be able to like have an advantage of the customizab yeah, customizability basically, or it will be just like another burden of the maintenance for the team that they would be able to spend like developing the product itself, not managing the infrastructure. So yeah, choose wisely, choose maybe simpler solution that you that will work for you, but try to not like fall into like a vendor lock-in in that case. So like Redshift was obviously like vendor lock-in because yeah, although Redshift is let's say has very good interoperability with Postgres, so they have the same like syntax, but like you cannot run Redshift on any other like vendor other than Redshift than AWS.
Yes, yeah. That's that's yeah. Thanks, Nikita. Makes tons of sense. And so I'm what I'm hearing is that you both of you foster speed at the beginning. Is that accurate? Like speed, like yes, if we can fine tune and customize a little bit, except if it really brings an edge and like a value that we don't have out of the box, better go out of the box, build on top of what exists and is stable, and then we just focus the resource on your core business instead of the technology. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's correct. That's correct.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's um, in a way, I think that good engineers are often the ones that like want to tinker and wants to like like this like GKE Kubernetes on GCP is like pretty expensive. Like we could run this in like Hertzner on these machines, like and I don't think it would be that hard to set up. And like someone who has that opinion is like often quite like the thinker, like the hacker, the good engineer. So you kind of want those people in your team. But then on the other hand, at least like early stage startup, you kind of also want to make sure that you don't spend like unnecessarily like at the wrong time, basically like spend time on that and where it's not needed. I
Yeah.
think that's just like a fun.
Yeah,
Fun.
Kubernetes is an interesting example here because on its own, like it's very, let's say, maintenance or like hard like maintain the Kubernetes cluster itself, not the applications in there, yeah, but the cluster itself. That, if, for example, like if you want to deploy the Kubernetes cluster like in Hetzner or like on the virtual machines and like manage the like upgrades of the cluster, then like networking, then stability, observability. It has like so many different components in it that cost of maintenance is very high. It's much higher than like savings that like small team can get from running it in Hetzner. Will be just more time will be spent towards like managing the Kubernetes installation itself than yeah,
Than using it.
yeah, than using it, or like getting advantages or savings in running it on a cheap like machines. So like on early stage startup, definitely like don't do that. Yeah, use managed solutions for things like that. So what I'm trying to say here, yeah, there's always a balance. For some things, yeah, you can easily set up your own like installation of Postgres. Let's say Postgres installation of the like single instance of the Postgres is one line of code in a terminal, right? And if you're early day startup, probably it will be enough for you for quite some time. Yeah. But like Kubernetes installation, don't do that.
Yep. Yeah, I think for what it's worth, Google also has a bunch of like, well, I don't really know if this is applicable to something else, but Kubernetes in GCP, and I think probably also in other clouds is a bit of this like, I don't know, gray area where it's open source, but then there's also a bunch of like proprietary components that you have available if you run it in GKE, say like secrets and like load balancers and so on, which are nice. So you end up using them. So you still, of course, get some of the benefits of open source, which is just that like someone can know how like have worked with Kubernetes in AWS, and then they join us, and our Kubernetes is in GCP, and it's still kind of the same. So they like know how it works. You still get that, but like there's less of the like portability and that part. But yeah, we're staying with GK.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, that's really good advice, folks. And so, look, it's a good segue for our last question before we open up to the audience to get live Q and A's. And so, the last one is, what advice would you give to startups choosing their first stack? I mean, you guys already shared some nuggets. Nikita, don't use JKE. I think I think this was a pretty important one from you. Maybe we can start with you, Nikita, on this one.
Yeah, certainly. Uh, so again, probably like my big point is like look for the balance. Like I said, early stage startup, you definitely don't want to spend time on like building your infrastructure rather than like building your product. So like maximize time like invested in the building the product. But also you don't want to burn your money on some like super expensive solution, right? Provided by the like I don't know, like managed software or like the proprietary software. So you have to basically decide what trade-offs you can have here. And like usually as an early stage startup, I would suggest to like focus more like first on the product. Yeah, like use managed solution, especially like complex solution like Kubernetes. Yeah, definitely go to like Google's GKE or like Amazon's alternative. Uh, and for like things like monitoring and observability stack, yeah, I think Johan mentioned today the Datadog. Datadog is amazing solution for observability monitoring. When you're early days startup, you don't have like too much of the infrastructure, too much of the like servers and so on, too much things to monitor. And but it's so like feature full. Yeah, it has like everything. So and super easy to install. So go to the managed solution for that. It will be expensive. It will be extremely expensive, but like in a couple of years, maybe in a year. So at first time, yeah, like while your infrastructure is not big, feel free to just start using this solution. So what I'm saying, invest like more in the product of the time and resources of your company, but think about alternatives. Yeah, like don't try to like not be locked in to some specific vendor. Yeah, and think about potential like migration. That's one of the strategies that can give you like later on some like cost benefits, like huge cost benefits. Yeah, if you are not locked in to some vendor, if you have an ability to move to another vendor, you have ability to negotiate very well and get a lot of like bonuses and credits if you decide to move like from one vendor to another vendor at some point. But again, keep it simple. Try to not over engineer solution like that not your product. Not over engineer your like ecosystem and infrastructure at first.
Thanks, Nikita. Yeah, that makes tons of sense. Johan, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, I echo that. Keep it simple. Also, choose stuff that you can like experiment with and test quickly. Choose something that you know and then that the kind of people that you will hire knows or that what they will know. Yeah, don't like do any kind of premature optimization. I think as far as like costs go, it's exactly as Nikita said that. Or I think another perspective is also that if you're like a startup that has kind of enough funding, I think as a startup you can be like a bit short on funding and trying to get the money to last basically, or you can be like you have enough funding and your big problem is just that you want to grow as fast as possible. Like you've gotten a lot of money from investors and now you need to grow as fast as possible. Like the problem is growing fast, not like saving the money. And in that case, I think just usually infra will be like unless you have like a lot of customers already, if it's like, okay, we need to hire a lot of people and do a lot of stuff so we get all of those customers, then your infra costs probably are like still small and your other costs are like the big ones. Then as long as you don't do anything that you won't be able to kind of back out of, like it's fine spending more on infra, I think. As long as there is like a path in the future to something reasonable that's not going to be like super expensive. Like I remember I interned at Stripe in 2018. I don't remember. I think Stripe was founded maybe, if someone remembers exactly, it's like 2009 maybe. So it was still like, or it was already kind of like a very old company, maybe like 10 billion valuation. And I was in like the whatever developer productivity part of the organization. I wasn't working on this directly, but I remember we had meetings about like CI costs because CI costs were like very high. And most of Stripe's engineers were like West Coast US or like US in general. So like the CI machines, the Jenkins machines weren't like really doing anything overnight. But they were still always all on overnight. There was no like scaling down, scaling up, etc. logic yet at that point. And I think they were spending like many millions a year on CI at that stage. But like CI is, it's not like infra directly, but still CI is like important. CI kind of makes you able to move, like having good and fast CI makes you able to move faster. And as long as your main concern isn't like profitability, it's fine to spend on that because it makes you move faster, and it would be like, it would maybe slow you down if you have to put resources into figuring out like how to save money on CI. So I think that's also like a perspective to think about when choosing like infra and such, to kind of, and of course, like if you're not in a situation where you have a lot of money and you're looking to be able to spend the money to grow, then like if you're not in that situation and you're spending a lot of money on infra, that's probably like a bad to be. So you kind of have to be like realistic about where you are. But I think those are my thoughts.
Yeah, that's really good advice from both of you folks. So thank you so much for that. Do we have any questions from the audience, Kaisu?
I don't think we had. If you have any like live questions or questions you'd like to ask, please send a message to the chat so I can see it, and then you can open your mic, or I can open your mic from here if you have any live questions from the audience. Let's see. Well, if we wait for a moment, I had like one question because you mentioned these like things that you mentioned kind of like these like there is like wrong time to spend on infrastructure. Have you had like any like major like fails or something that you realized that you spent, for example, too much on your infra too early, or that you should have like started like spending on infra or doing some changes like earlier than you did? Like, have you had those like fail experiences? Like, do you have anything to share, or like, let's call them learnings, or something that you're like, oh, I should have done this earlier, I should have not done that?
I mean, I don't think I have any like big mistakes. I think we've made a lot of like changes and iteration, but I think generally it has been very much like iteration, like doing something and then you like learn from it and figure out that, okay, like it would have been better, like it's better to do this instead of that.
Yeah.
Like one example, I think early I was like a bit, now I'm like, most of our stuff is in GCP. I want the like safe and simple solutions. Early I was like testing out these like new trendy tools on like Twitter for like logging and observability and whatnot that like looked really nice and was exactly what I wanted on the surface. But then actually when you like use them a bit more, they weren't like, there was like something lacking that
Yeah.
But I don't think it was like big mistakes or anything. I think with building a company and software engineering and infra decisions and so on, it's a lot of it is about iteration. And as long as you can kind of keep iterating and improving and making things better over time, then you're good.
Yeah, I think that's a really good advice. So keep your mind open and be ready to like move and change fast, test new things. Yeah. What about you, Nikita? Do you have these learning experiences or something you learned, especially as Inkitt is a little bit more grown company? You might have like you've scaled more like your infrastructure as well as you're a little bit older. Like, have you had like some learnings along the way, or like certain points that you're like, oh, I should have done this a bit earlier or a bit later? Oh, by the way, at this point, Johan, did you have
Yeah, I need to jump in a couple of minutes. I have
yes. Thank you so much at this point, in case you're jumping off when we are discussing. But yeah, going back to Nikita, like, have you had those learning experiences or specific situations where you're like, I should have done this decision earlier, I waited a little bit too long, I shouldn't do this, going back to some solution you already used?
Yeah, so it probably comes to iterations as well. So like at some point you like started to see that like the current solution is like not ideal, and like you would benefit from like migration to something else, to like proper tool at your scale. So for example, like that happens with like Redshift in our case. So like we uh, at some point, yeah, we realized that it's not the right solution for us, and we would need to do a migration. Probably, if we would do a migration earlier, yeah, we'd save a lot of money, right? We can think about it. But on the other hand, it worked. It worked in the past. Yeah, it served its business value. Yeah, okay. We can say that we overspent some money on that, and like migration took longer. So if we like started earlier, yeah, we would like save some money. But from the business perspective, from the growth perspective, yeah, it's not that big deal. Yeah, like again, like what Johan said. Yeah, if you have money and you focused on growth, maybe it's not the like it's not the right decision to like always thinking about like cost savings, like yeah, where we can cut things. Yeah, like you mm, most likely if you spend more resources on like product development, yeah, you will benefit more. But speaking about some like maybe like funny cases that happened to us, we were using like Firebase for like some of the products for like authentication, and yeah, as I remember it correctly, in the past, Firebase real-time database, just because it was super easy to like start, like when some of the mobile applications were built, uh, uh, and uh, and then like there were a couple of cases where we just found ourselves that some misconfiguration in the like this like cloud product, uh, and maybe a bad deployment caused like a huge bill over like one night, where like some API, let's say, of the Firebase was called like in a loop, and basically it was hard to for us to find it at the beginning, because it's some like cloud service. Yeah, it can handle millions of requests, you don't see it.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong happens, and then like couple of days later, like you see the cost anomaly, that some of the
Right.
services like just spikes to the moon, and like, okay, what should we do? That's a problem. So it happened like maybe 2 or 3 times,
Yeah.
and like luckily, like it's good to have a relationship with the vendor.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely check those
So
out.
yeah, we were able to like basically tell our perspective on like what happened, that it was a mistake, and like
Mhm.
they viewed the costs
Yeah.
for us.
So be aware and have a good relationships with vendor is definitely a learning here. Yeah, cool.
Totally.
I also had like a kind of one of the final questions for Amin. As we've been discussing from the startup perspective now, from Nikita and Johan from specific companies, but I've at Aiven and your previous job, I mean, you've seen a lot startups and companies. So what would you say, like from your perspective, like seeing masses of companies, are there some like common mistakes or things that startups have done while building their data infrastructure, or smaller companies that have done, and you always kind of like suggest to avoid, or like situations where you need to help the startups?
Yeah, look, great question, Kaisu. I think there's no such thing as huge mistake. It's probably I was going to call them experiments, right? Because when
Yeah.
you're in a startup mode, you experiment, you try out so many things. Some of them work, some of them doesn't work. The most important thing is, for the trajectory to go to the right direction, right? So obviously the build versus buy, which is the whole conversation we had today, is so important. Like now, there's commoditized building blocks. Uh, Building everything from scratch while you have such a small team and you have to show growth is probably an experiment that you don't want to do if you can avoid it. And that's pretty much what we've covered today, right? Like every single startup, we're going to need to store data in a structured, semi-structured, unstructured way. That we're going to need to do search. That we're going to need to do real time. To some of them, uh, spending time recreating those building blocks or trying to maintain those from pure open source core products, we're going to cost a lot of engineering time. And your resources, we're going to spend time on this specific part instead of spending time on building the value of the startup, if that makes sense. So it's probably one thing that I have seen personally a lot, the build versus buy. And it was great to have Nikita and Johan's perspective today, because and one of the things they said was, and it's interesting, it's like, well, like for observability, for example, at the beginning it's not that expensive because you don't have like billions of events, and it's so easy to have like a proprietary framework. So you plug and play, you got tons of features. We know it will going to be expensive at one point, but for at the beginning it's okay. So you can refocus on your data stack, for example, and make the right decision. I think that's pretty clever as well. Sometimes you don't have this approach of like, one side of my infrastructure should go this way and the other one maybe should be built differently. Uh, just be agile and always, make sure that those decisions are tied to where you want to go, and uh, you can always change later on.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's a really good point. And yeah, everything kind of like what we've discussed kind of like has surrounded or like supported that statement, definitely. So yeah, I think now it's a good time to kind of like wrap up this session. First of all, thank you so much for joining, Nikita and Amin, and also Johan, who already left. And yeah, thank you for the insights. I believe these are valuable for the startups to be shared later and for the startups who have joined the session. Yeah.
Thanks, Kaisu. Thank you so much, Nikita. And Johan, if you watch the end of the recording, thank you so much for such an insightful live session. Thanks, folks. Have a great day ahead.
Yeah, thank you for having me, and thank you everybody who watched it.
Yeah. Yeah. Good.
Exactly. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.